right. Hi, Pam. How are you?
Good, Saya. How are you doing?
Good. I'm really excited to be talking to you today about entrepreneurship. I know that it's an interesting topic in the South Asian community. Between the two of us, we both own our own businesses, and it's got its ups and downs. And so I'll just introduce myself to everyone who's watching. My name is Nagori. I'm an ophthalmologist. I also have a telemedicine company called simplehealth.com. And today we're going to talk about sort of entrepreneurship as being a South Asian woman and sort of the implications of that. And Pam, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah. We just kind of put this together and we're just going to interview each other and kind of see where it goes. But Saya and I got to know each other just a few minutes ago. Well, it wasn't a few minutes. We talked almost for an hour before this, or maybe even more.
Yeah,
but
well,
it was really, yeah, exactly. It was very nice to meet you finally, Saya, like virtually with a face and everything. And I could probably talk to you for 2 more hours. But my name is Pamela Mehta. I'm a board certified orthopedic surgeon, and I started my own practice about 3.5 years ago. And I also recently joined a startup as VP of Medical Affairs at MDisrupt. So we are going to talk about kind of in the setting of being a South Asian woman, how our paths came to be what they are, and just our entrepreneurial endeavors.
Yeah, that sounds great. And hopefully this will be valuable to everyone watching. And if not, then sorry.
Yeah. You never know, actually. Something I said at Pinnacle Conference was that even 5 years ago, I never in a million years would have thought that I was going to start my own practice. I thought that I would be an employee-based doctor forever. There was nothing I wanted to do that had the word entrepreneur or business in it. And so sometimes it's important to see things like this because you just never know where your life could take you, even in a year or two.
I totally agree with that. And I think so much of that, it's funny because I feel like we can just go right into what we're talking about, which is
sure.
I feel like South Asian mentality is so much based in certainty and security. And, it's hard to start a business as a South Asian person who, when your parents came to this country, you're kind of like, just something that's secure. And that's why so many Indian parents wanted their kids to be doctors, because they saw it as the secure profession.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily.
Will you share with us what's your parents' background? Because I think that also has a lot to do with South Asian parents wanting their children to have a secure, stable job.
Yeah, so my dad's an engineer and my mom is a chemist, and definitely my dad has gotten laid off, I think 3 or 4 times in his career. My mom, I don't think she's ever been laid off, but, I think that also shaped a lot of his views on that uncertainty and not having anything to fall back on, because obviously his parents were in India. So if he wasn't, making money, then there was no money. I think a lot of us, worst case scenario, not that we would want to, but we could probably move back in with our parents if we absolutely, really had to.
Yeah.
So not having that safety net, I think, is definitely part of that cultural mentality of, if you go into business, there's a risk. There's always a risk associated with that. And what about you? What about your
actually, mine is very similar to you, and we didn't even talk about this before, but my dad's an engineer and my mom is an accountant. So they had experience with corporate America, and for them, they always from the beginning felt the only profession where you're truly your own boss is being a physician. And that's just, whether that's true or not in real life, that's just what they felt from the beginning. And so they were as anti-business for me as you could possibly get. For them, it was like education. And with that education, you need to do something that's going to be stable and secure. And for them, that was being a physician. So I think that a lot of South Asian people, as you're saying too, they come from this background of pick the most risk-averse route and be a worker bee, because I think Asian minorities are very good at that, being worker bees and just kind of, just doing that traditional path.
Yeah, totally. I can't even remember even considering anything outside of medicine because of that mentality.
Same with me.
Like just plow down the road of becoming a doctor, and then becoming a doctor, and then telling my parents that I was gonna get involved and do a startup, and they were just like, wait, what? Like, please don't do that.
Okay, so well, tell us about that. That's a great segue. How did you fall into that or pursue that, and what was your parents' reaction?
Yeah, so after fellowship, I moved to New York, and I had been in New York before during residency. I just left for my fellowship and came back and was in a practice, and sort of it was just kind of, I don't want to say mundane, but I saw the path for the next 25 years, and I saw it being exactly the same day in and day out. And it's definitely for some people, and it just wasn't for me. And so I, ended up getting an academic job where I had the freedom to do academic medicine and also pursue outside interests. And so I started going to a lot of meetups. I started going to a lot of tech events. I actually started a few things on my own in the whole startup space, which unfortunately didn't really do well. And they just they failed miserably, actually. But it was a good learning.
I'm sure you learned. Yeah.
It was a good learning experience. And more than anything, I feel like it made me know that like I was just not going to ever be just a 9-to-5 doctor, like that, like not, and not to say the word just as if that's like a bad thing, like that's not a bad thing at all, but I just knew that I couldn't go into the hospital, work for someone else, and it's funny because our parents thought that we'd have control, but now in the United States, at least, doctors really don't have a lot of control. The control is with the insurance companies, it's with the administration, and who knows, like maybe if me and you had been physicians 20 years ago,
Exactly.
maybe we would have stayed employed. Yeah, maybe we would have stayed employed at hospitals, and we wouldn't have done our own private practices. And so who knows? So that's how Simple Health started, basically. And Simple Health, for those of you who don't know, it's an online telemedicine platform for women's health, and we do birth control right now, but we're planning to do a lot of other avenues as well in women's health. And we started with a team of 3 people in early 2016, and now we're over 50 people. So it's been like quite successful, and it's been a great ride, and it's shaped a lot of like who I am now. And yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. And I would say how I got into it was truly just like not letting it go, like sort of not letting that inside me sort of just fizzle out, and kind of continuing to pursue avenues of how can I get into something that's more entrepreneurial or more innovation focused. And that's sort of just really how it happened. It wasn't like a magical thing that happened one day. It was sort of this process of just continually like, and actually, how did you get involved with
M-Disrupt?
M-Disrupt. How did you get involved?
Yeah. No, I have more questions about Simple Health and where you were in your pathway with traditional medicine and Simple Health. But for me, I was more established. So I'm a few years older than you, and I had a path where I was an employed physician at a large managed care organization. And in terms of parents' reaction, they were super stoked because they thought you make a steady paycheck, and and in their mind, you're your own boss because you're a doctor. How could anyone boss around a doctor, right? They don't understand that. And so for them, they didn't understand hospital administration, all the suits, and that side of medicine. And so I had sort of an interesting path while I was there. And when I had my children, I faced a lot of pregnancy discrimination. So that's ultimately what made me want to leave that sort of environment. And that was still confusing to my parents. They couldn't understand how someone could be kind of in charge of how I practice medicine and the time that I took off for my children and things like that. And so after that experience, and I'm an orthopedic surgeon, which is mostly male dominated, the 6% women. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall, having had 2 children very quickly, once I wasn't attending, that this is not going to work where I'm joining a large group of men, because I'm just not going to handle someone breathing down my back and expecting the same productivity as them, even though I was at that point very productive, and I would venture to say as productive as they were. But I just knew I needed to get off that fast track and do something for myself. So that's how I created my practice. And once my practice was established, I'm in the Silicon Valley, and there's a lot going on here with health tech and startups. And I met a woman that was at 23andMe. She was the ex-vice president of marketing there. And she had started her own marketing company. And me and her were talking about how the health tech industry, their whole idea is to move fast and get products out. And that in healthcare, we do things much more slower. We are evidence-based. Our whole thing is to do no harm first. And she said, I think both of those are almost at odds with each other, those lines of thinking. And I would like to, like meld them together so that the startups have some advisors, and also doctors can get involved in passion projects that they may have outside of clinical medicine. And so just a few months ago, me and her decided, she had already started the actual company a year ago, but she needed a kind of a medical arm on that. And so I became their vice president of medical affairs, which has been awesome. So right now I'm currently managing my practice that I started a few years ago, which is now kind of on cruise control. Although I think when you run your own practice, there's always things that come up, like with COVID.
Yeah.
But I am trying to manage doing the startup thing at the same time. And now I think I'm old enough, and my parents now kind of have realized the error of their ways when it comes to stability and security. And so now I think they're just really proud that I continue to be motivated to do different things and try to figure out like how I can make medicine long lasting. Because as I'm sure that you have experienced too, clinical medicine can be a total burnout. And so you need these other things that are exciting and maybe even non-clinical, but using your medical degree to kind of get you through your career in a different way.
And, the money's really, unfortunately, I don't want to say it's about the money, but I think when the reimbursements are going down and the cost of education is going up, it's not what it was. It's not what it was many years ago, where, you didn't have to see. I mean, there is a definitive number of patients that I have to see every day in order to pay the bills, right? Like,
yes.
and that is just the way it works. And it's not like, oh, the doctor only spent, X amount of minutes with me. And it's just like, well, if the doctor doesn't spend like that amount of time with you, that doctor is not going to be available to see you anymore, because they're going to have to close shop, basically.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I think that's a little bit of I think now our parents get it, because there's so much like vocalness about that. But it's funny. I guess I just want you to share the story of your parents' reaction when you told them you were either going to be an orthopedic surgeon or a urologist, and they didn't know what a urologist was, and they were unhappy with both. And so I'll let you finish.
Thank you. Yes, I think as South Asian women, we deal with a lot every step of the way. And although my parents, just like it sounds like your parents, wanted us to be these educated, strong, independent women, only to a point, especially with my parents. I mean, marriage was definitely on the forefront of everything. So it was like, you will be as smart as any guy is, you will be as educated as them, and you will stand on your own feet and be independent to a point. And so when I went to medical school, I thought I was going to do primary care. And that was probably just because that was ingrained in my head. And probably what my parents thought as like the ideal job for an Indian woman was to be a family doctor. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but my interest kind of showed more the surgical side. And so when I came to my parents at the beginning of my 3rd year and said, hey, I've done OB-GYN and pediatrics and family medicine, and I'm not that thrilled about them, I think I want to be a surgeon, they were like, well, that's going to be difficult because who's going to want to marry you?
Yeah.
And I just kind of brushed that off as, whatever, we'll figure it out later. But then when I came to them and said I wanted to do orthopedics or urology, they didn't understand what urology was. And when I explained it to them, my mother literally started crying and said, please pick the other one, pick orthopedics, because I don't know how I'm going to explain to anybody's family what you do. And I don't think that you're going to get married. And so at the time I was young enough that it didn't matter which one I chose. I mean, I could find happiness in either. So I did go that way, but I probably maybe would have been a urologist had it not been for my very traditional Indian parents.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, and also what I think is really interesting about both of us is that we both actually started these businesses with our husbands, which
Yes. Yeah.
so interesting because
Tell us about your experience, because your husband is not in medicine, correct?
he's not in medicine. And I think for both of us, again, as South Asian women, you would think that if we were starting a business with our husbands, like we would be like the sort of manager or assistant role.
Sure.
But in both of our scenarios, our husbands are playing the manager and like sort of managerial roles, which
Yes.
not to say that either one of our husbands isn't, capable of being the star, but
absolutely.
But we are the stars of our shows, sort of. And
Totally.
And it's really interesting because my husband is so he's got a business degree and he's does real estate and he does a lot of other things. He's very talented and but operations is definitely his strong suit and it's not my strong suit. And I'm more of a creative thinker and I'm an idea person. And I'm definitely and of course, like he's not a doctor, I am a doctor. So if we're gonna start a practice, like I'm gonna be the doctor.
Exactly.
And so that was very interesting because all the South Asian doctors that I've seen start practices with their spouses, in like 90% of cases, it's the man that's the physician and
yes, totally.
And the wife that's managing. And so we both have like an opposite, or at least start off with an opposite situation, which I think is great. I mean, I think that it's amazing now that in our generation, we have these males that lift up, strong women that want to be surgeons or the leaders in their practice. And I never, ever, again, if you told me 10 years ago that you're going to start a practice with your husband and your husband's not going to be like you're going to be the one who's going to be seeing the patients. I would have been like, what? No, like no.
So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about when Simple Health got started and when you decided to start your own practice and why you decided to start your own practice in the setting of having this other company that was clearly on the road to success.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really, and I think you know this as well, it's really hard to let go of clinical medicine, right? Yeah. You spend so much time doing that. And I was moving from New York to DC to be with my husband. And I started interviewing at practices and hospitals in DC. And I just felt like I wasn't getting my worth. Like I felt like the pay wasn't good enough. I was, 6 years out at this point. I was a seasoned surgeon. I was, I knew what I was doing. I knew how to hustle. And I just felt like all the offers I was getting weren't good enough.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to my husband. He's like, you know what? I can help you and you should just start your own practice. Like you're very good with patients. You have a business mind, you have business acumen. So you should just do it. And so for me, also having a practice in addition to having Simple Health was when you have your own practice, I mean, you know this, again, you can choose. So I don't work 5 days a week. I work, 2 to 3 days a week. And I have other physicians that are there as well that help me during the other days. And sometimes we're only open 4 days a week and that's just what it is. And we provide excellent care like when we're there, but we're just not a factory. We're not open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. Like that's just, we're not a hospital. We're a boutique practice. I mean, we do take insurance. And then it's given me a lot of freedom to do other things like startup things and be part of Simple Health and have this career in women's health as well as eye care. And so that's one of the biggest reasons that I did it. And then the other reason was, like, I'm just not ready to give up clinical medicine.
Yeah.
We spent so much time training, so much time learning how to do this. So it's not something I'm ready to give up right now. Like maybe one day.
Yeah.
What about you? How did you manage to start your practice?
Yeah, so I think that, as I was saying before, I couldn't be in an employed model anymore. It just wasn't working for me and my family. And my husband is in medicine. He's an orthopedic spine surgeon, and he's still employed. And it just, with the strictness of the schedule and having children, I hate to say this, but women often, most of the time, are the default parent. They are. And your kid is sick from school or has their spring parade at school that's been told to you 2 days before, or you've got to, make the teacher appreciation gifts, and that day you're the room mom for this sort of activity. That just happens on the fly. And I wanted to do those things with my children. My husband would want to also, but it had to be one of us. And although we do have help, we have a part-time nanny, we wanted to do a lot of these kind of mundane routine activities. So that was probably the impetus to start my own practice. And then I was having the same problem where I was out for about 6 or 7 years as well. And I just wasn't getting any kind of offers or contracts that felt like I was also getting my worth. And so I did not want to start my own practice because I didn't want anything to do with the business side of medicine. I didn't understand it. I didn't want to fill my brain with that. So my husband, being a full-time spine surgeon, said, I will help you with it, just like how it sounds like your husband said that. My husband would like to call himself a wantrepreneur. He's actually very risk averse, but if it's somebody else is doing it, he wants to be involved. And so he kind of helped me set up, and we literally found an office space from a chiropractor to rent. We bought a desk off Craigslist, and I had Practice Fusion, which was a free EMR at the time. And he was my virtual assistant. So I didn't even have an MA, no assistant, nothing. I had a printer to print some patient intake forms, but he would schedule we've got a Google number. It came to his cell phone. He would schedule my appointments between spine surgery. And at one point we got into an argument because he tried to schedule me an appointment when I was supposed to pick up the kids. And he said, okay, we cannot do this anymore. I can't be running between cases and scheduling your appointments anymore. So we got a virtual assistant at a ridiculously low rate. And that was like my overhead. It was so small and little at the time. And I was just a one-man show. And now obviously I have like a real office and real people, assistants in real life. And it just kind of grew from there. But I'm also like you, where I wanted some flexibility. I didn't want to work every single day. And I think that when you're starting your practice, even if you're not actually seeing patients, you are working every day. I mean, you are on the phone and on your computer, even on your days off, trying to do the business aspect of it. So for me, that's how I got to my private practice. And I think also, similar to you, it's very hard to let go of clinical medicine. It's been our identity for so many years that I do want to branch off and do some non-clinical things, because seeing patients every day can burn you out. But I don't think I'll ever let go of clinical medicine. And I actually don't think that physicians that are even involved in anything physician-based, whether it's a startup or anything else, should give up clinical medicine, because it just takes you too far away from it, and to understand kind of the daily grind and what happens in medicine. But that's kind of how I got to where I am now.
Yeah, it keeps you super grounded, right? Like I think being there keeps you really, really grounded. And I even just this morning, I was like, something was annoying me about something, and then I read something about one of my patients who unfortunately lost her son, and you're just kind of like, and it's not like I don't treat her for depression, I treat her for her eyes, but you're still connected to people in a way where they share their lives with you. And when I have something like that, I'm like, okay, whatever my problem was this morning it's fine. It's like it's not that big a deal. Like it's just
humbling. It really is. It definitely grounds you, like you said. So yeah, it's not something I think that, maybe in 10 years I'll give it up, but not anytime soon. And so
yeah, no, I'm with you. I'll call you before I make that
talk you off the ledge.
Talk me off the ledge. So I guess to sort of start to wrap it up here, what are some tips that you would give a budding entrepreneur, how to sort of deal with some of the identities that we have as South Asians, and maybe breaking out of them. I mean, I know now we see so many startups led by South Asians, which is really reassuring, but, you know, any sort of, I know I have my piece of advice, but I'm going to say
Yeah.
that, yeah. But
Yeah, I'll start, and then we'll hear what you have to say too. I think confidence is one of them. I think you have to have the confidence that you got to this position, and you went through a lot. You had to work really hard to get here. So just having confidence, and I know a lot of people like to use this word imposter syndrome, which I don't know why I don't like to use that word, but I don't use that phrase often, because I think underlying all that is confidence. So if you have confidence in yourself and your abilities and your worth, I mean, I think it's really important that we both said we were about 6 to 7 years out and we were getting these contracts that just weren't our worth. I know so many female physicians, especially female physicians, that are just working their butt off and they're just not being paid for their work properly. And they're just in this like hamster wheel of going from practice to practice, or being in a dead end practice where they have no equity. They're not making a good salary. And I just feel like underlying all of that is confidence. Know your worth, know who you are, know that you have the abilities to get things done. And, that you were trained to be a good doctor, but you can learn how to be an entrepreneur and to leverage those two things together to, create something wonderful. And also, I think especially as a South Asian woman with children, like, you can make the life that you want. You just have to set that goal and set that intention and then just do it. I mean, money will come. I mean, and also for a while at least, and maybe forever, you just have to realize how important it is for you to make a certain amount of money and what you can do to live within those means. And then beyond that, you can make anything work.
Yeah, no,
that would be my advice. Also, I mean, especially with starting a practice, I tell this, that my number one thing to everyone is overhead. Keep your overhead low. Do not start with the fancy building, so many employees, so much fancy equipment, a fancy EMR. Start really lean. You can only work up from there. And really, your business, you are the face of your business. And if you work on how you present yourself to patients in your bedside manner, people don't care if they're in a super fancy building. You can go to Home Goods and buy some cheap stuff to decorate your office. You don't need to do all like the crazy fanciness. And so, especially with starting a private practice, I say keep it lean and your overhead down and just work from there.
Yeah, no, totally. I totally agree with that, because, I think one of the benefits to keeping something so lean is, and this sort of segues into what my top advice would be, which was sort of something we had talked about before we actually, started doing our formal talk, which was finding good people, right? And so if you find good people and you want to onboard them, it's nice if you can give them a piece of the pie or give them some equity in your business, whether it's a physician practice, whether it's a startup or some kind of small business. Like, if you find someone that's really amazing to work with and really shares your passion and drive, and if you haven't spent a crazy amount of money starting your business, then you can actually offer them equity at a reasonable buy-in, right? Versus like some people who spend so much money starting their business and then the buy-in is like just not reasonable for people, right? And so I think that's like one thing to keep in mind with like starting lean. And yeah, so I guess my advice would be definitely know your worth, which is, has to do with confidence. And I guess the flip side of that is like, know that you're also going to have to hustle, right? Like, no one's going to hand you anything.
That's a good one.
No one's going to hand you anything. Like, when my texts don't show up, whether it's good reason or no reason, but I do everything, right? Like, I don't expect that someone's going to magically show up at my door and then start checking my patients or start answering phone calls. Like, we were super busy the other day and I was answering phone calls. It was actually funny because I actually don't know how to schedule appointments on our new EMR. And so I was, I'm talking to a patient, they're like, oh, I want to book an appointment for, Monday. I was like, great. And then I was like, come here. I don't know how to book this appointment. And they're like, hello. I'm like, yes, still here. Hold on, but you got to learn how to hustle and do all the things that are you should know how to do every job in your business. Like,
I 100% agree. And also just like you said, like it's a lot of hustle. When I started, I would just go out to the physicians and the other referring people, physical therapists, chiropractors in the community and take them, coffee, pastries. It doesn't have to be an expensive, fancy lunch, business cards. Now I was starting to get patients in my office, and the doctor next to me asked my staff, like, how is Dr. Mehta getting so many patients? She just started. And they shared it, and we don't hide it or anything. So he went to his staff and said, will you format a letter and send a letter out to the same doctors that she went and met? And who do you think still got the referrals? They came to me because I came and put that personalized touch. I didn't just send a generic letter out like he did. And there's nothing wrong with letters, but I just think it was so funny how he interpreted that. He didn't take it as, oh, she went out on her own while she had all this free time and wasn't seeing patients. And he was not busy at all. So he could have easily gone and done that himself, but it's the hustle aspect of it that I think is key. So that is great advice, but I think we probably got to wrap up now. But thank you for joining me and, us having this discussion together. It was super great to get to know you also. And I hope that we helped some South Asian women out there in terms of some entrepreneurial endeavors. And you can contact either me or Saya anytime. I'm sure that she also would love to impart any knowledge and advice, and same over here. And we really are just, we're very excited and proud of this new generation and social media and how it connects people. I mean, me and Saya would not know each other at all if it wasn't for social media. And I've learned so much from her just from speaking with her for this entire morning that we've been chatting. So make the connections out there, talk to people, and, know that we all have your back. And if you need anything from us at all, we're here.
Yeah. And I feel the same way about you. And just mention your Instagram handle. So if people want to connect with you.
That's great. Yeah. So I'm at Dr.Pamela Mehta. What about you?
It's just Saya Nagori, MD.
Okay.
Oh no, actually I changed mine. It's Dr.Saya, Saya.
Okay. Got it. And then do you have, you must have a Simple Health Instagram too.
Yeah, it's Simple Health. The Instagram is Simple Health and the website simplehealth.com. If anybody is looking for birth control, we offer a remote platform to do it. So.
Okay, yeah, and the startup that I just joined is md.disrupt, so mdisrupt on Instagram, and we also have a website, mdisrupt.com. And if you as a physician are interested at all in getting involved in a startup, that might be a place that you can start.
Is it 1D or 2Ds?
Sorry, 1D. 1D.
So it's mdisrupt.
md.isrupt.
Okay.
On Instagram, but on the web, it's just mdisrupt.
Okay, got it. All right, well, bye everybody. Thanks for
joining.
Bye everyone.